So I am a 33-year-old male recently attended my cousin's wedding, and there was an incident during the after-party with my parents. My parents and I aren't on the best of terms, and we try to avoid speaking to one another as much as we can. The reason is my younger brother Jack, a 29-year-old male who is pretty much the golden child. Growing up, nothing was ever his fault and he got whatever he asked for, which wasn't the case for me. And the older he grew, the more entitled and bratty he became, so he and I aren't exactly in touch either. I cut my parents out of my life after they told me that they wouldn't be paying for me to go to college and I had to arrange everything myself, and that was many years ago. And in recent times, we have been civil to each other at family gatherings, but that's about it. Jack and I don't speak at all, even when we meet. And I'm okay with that, because I don't think he is the kind of guy that I would want to be on speaking terms with either. He is a grown man-child who still lives with his parents and spends most of his weekends playing video games with his online friends while emptying can after can of beer. Now, a couple of days ago I attended my cousin's wedding, like I said, and there my relatives and I were just sitting around, chatting and drinking after the ceremony, like one does. Out of nowhere, my family came around and joined the conversation, which I thought was a little strange because they usually try to avoid me, but I didn't think much of it, and it wasn't as if I could tell them to leave me alone because a lot of people were sitting around us, and it wasn't really a private conversation. Once they were seated, the conversation suddenly turned to me when my dad asked me how my job was going. I'm a banker, and I recently received a significant raise along with my promotion. I celebrated it with a couple of my friends by going out to a bar last weekend, but that's none of my family's business, so I told him that it was going well and ended my sentence there. But my parents were not willing to drop it, so then my mother asked me if there was something more that I wanted to share with the family. I said no, so my dad told me to drop the act and said that he was aware of the promotion and the raise. I was a little surprised, but I wasn't comfortable discussing this with so many of my relatives sitting around us, so I told him that I didn't think that it was any of their business and tried to excuse myself so I could go to the loo, but I honestly just wanted to get the hell out of there. However, my father told me to sit back down so we could talk about this like a family. When he said that, I got annoyed because I didn't think of him as my family whatsoever, and I am pretty sure that they didn't consider me family either. And they proved me right when my father said that in spite of earning so much, I couldn't contribute and give back to my parents who had worked so hard to raise me and give me everything that I wanted as a child. And now that they were on the brink of retirement, I was turning my back on them and being incredibly ungrateful and selfish. All my other relatives were either looking at their phones or at the floor because they knew that this wasn't a conversation that they were meant to be a part of. It was a clear attempt by my parents to humiliate me and pressure me into giving them money, and I knew why they needed the money as well. You see, my brother doesn't have a job and is still relying on our parents to provide for him, and his lifestyle is not one that's very affordable. He wants to go out clubbing and drinking with his friends almost every other weekend, and he wants to buy every new gizmo because he fancies himself to be a tech geek or whatever, and these things come at a cost which my parents are probably struggling with. Both of them are close to retirement now and need to start thinking about life after that as well. They can't exactly continue to support my brother forever, and I knew that they were trying to humiliate me in front of my relatives so that I would agree to send them money to save face in front of these people, and then they would hold that against me and continue to enable the golden child. But I wasn't going to let myself fall for that, and even though I was pretty embarrassed, I decided to retaliate and treat them the same way that they were treating me. So I snapped at them and brought up the way they had laughed in my face all those years ago when I had asked them to cover my college tuition. They had told me back then that they only had enough funds for one kid to go to college, and that was not going to be me, so I had to look out for myself. And I kid you not, they had actually laughed when I brought it up with them, as if I had cracked some joke. But I guess it was fair because that's what I really was to them, a joke. However, now that they could see that I was earning and my brother was not, they wanted me to contribute to the family. And I knew that this was just a way for them to continue pouring money down my brother's throat. So I brought up that incident and told them that they had not spent a single dollar more on me than whatever was necessary, and had only let me live in their house and provided for me up until I turned 18, which was pretty much the bare minimum that they could do for me, and they did it not because they wanted to, but because it was required by the law. So they needed to stop acting like they did it out of kindness rather than obligation. I didn't even realize it, but I kind of got choked up while talking about it and had to rush to the loo so I wouldn't break down in front of them. I just didn't want to give them that satisfaction. When I came back out, the crowd had dissolved and nobody was sitting in that area anymore, so I headed out and went back home. I tried not to think about it for the next couple of days, but then my brother reached out to me and told me something that blew my mind. Apparently, the news of our confrontation at that wedding had been doing the rounds of gossip among my relatives, and unfortunately, it had reached some people that my parents wouldn't want in on this huge secret about me having to cover my college expenses myself. They had borrowed money in the past from a couple of their relatives and told them they needed it to cover my tuition, as well as my brother's, and had promised to return it in a couple of years. But now several years have passed and they still haven't returned that money, and whenever they were contacted by those relatives, they claimed that they were still struggling financially, even when they weren't and were actually pretty comfortable. They would just be too stingy to return the money that they had borrowed and were using it all to fund my brother's lifestyle. And now, my brother told me that those people had found out about their lies because of what I said at the wedding, and 3 people had filed a lawsuit against my parents, demanding their money back. They hadn't done that so far because they believed that my parents were struggling and didn't want to add to their troubles. But now that they knew the truth, there was nothing that was going to make them hold back. But my brother wanted me to talk to them and convince them that I had just been lying to save face at the wedding because I didn't want to admit that I had been a bad son in front of so many of my relatives. He wanted me to convince them to take back the lawsuits so our parents could think of something to get them out of trouble. I thought that it was a ridiculous idea and declined, but now he and my parents are demanding that I get them out of trouble because I am the one who got them into this situation. So, am I the a-hole for telling my relatives the truth about how my parents hadn't paid for me to go to college? Update 1. So I blocked my brother, and I decided to go ahead and post my side of the story online for everybody to see, just in case they had any more tricks up their sleeve. I had a feeling that they would try to make themselves the same as the victims, so I made my move first, and I don't feel bad about it because I'm just telling people the truth. They might have borrowed some more money from people who are not even related to us, and they deserve to be in the loop as well. In a way, I'm just doing good for the world and looking out for other people. My parents and my brother have each other to look out for them, unlike me, because I pretty much always had to look out for myself in that household, so now they'll know how I felt. I can't even believe that my brother tried to guilt trip and manipulate me into lying to cover up for my parents and thought that it worked. To be honest, even while I was making that post, I knew deep down that most people would agree I didn't do anything wrong. And the responses to my post just reaffirmed what I already knew. So thank you guys for being on my side and not letting me doubt myself. And I'll also answer some of the very common questions that people were asking in the comments. For starters, I'm not familiar with these relatives who my parents borrowed money from, and neither have I ever even met them, so I don't know why they decided to help my parents out, but I guess they were just really kind people, and my parents decided to take advantage of that. That's the only possible explanation I can come up with, and I don't think reaching out to them to figure out why they gave my parents the money right now is a good idea. All I am hoping is that these people have some paperwork or documents to show that my parents had borrowed that money and intended to return it. Or else I don't think they even have a case against them, which would be a bummer for me. Some of you had also asked about my grandparents, and I really don't know what to say about that. I hadn't ever really been close to any of my grandparents. My mom's parents passed away a couple of years ago, but my dad's parents are still alive. It doesn't matter, though, because I have never been in touch with them, and even they considered my brother to be the better sibling, so they're just irrelevant. They were not the ones who helped me pay for college, contrary to popular belief. No, it was actually all just me, and I worked through college to pay off my tuition, along with a little help from a couple of my friends and their parents. I did return all the money to everybody that I had borrowed from eventually, after I got my first job, but I never asked for any help from my parents or my family, so I made it on my own, and my parents had no part to play in it. Back then that was kind of disappointing for me, but now I can proudly say that I accomplished it all myself. and that's something I am really proud of. So, I hope that answers all the questions that you guys had about me and my life, and clears up everything. I don't know what's going to happen next with my parents and my brother, but whatever happens, I'm going to keep you guys in the loop. I think you folks are pretty much a part of this now. Update 2. Okay, it's been 2 weeks since my first post here, and like I said, a couple of my relatives are suing my parents for not returning their money, and thankfully they did have proof according to what I heard. So my parents are in big legal trouble right now. But for some reason they are being idiots about it, and instead of focusing on their defense, they think it's a good idea to come after me and try to harass me into taking their side and admitting that whatever I said at the wedding was a huge lie that I made up to make them look bad. They visited me, along with my brother, a couple of days ago, probably to try and intimidate me or something equally ridiculous. I can understand that desire to set everything right by scaring me into telling a lie about myself, because they know that they are in a pretty screwed up situation right now, and their only bet is to make me look like the bad guy. So anyway, they showed up, and I almost didn't open my door because I could see that it was them. But then my brother kept knocking for several minutes, and out of sheer annoyance I let them in, but I told them to make it quick because I didn't want to waste my day on them. My father was pretty point blank and told me that he needed me to lie to cover up for them because they couldn't afford to pay back everybody at once and needed me to buy them some time. Obviously, now that the cat was out of the bag, it would be difficult to get it back in, but he wanted me to at least try for the sake of our family and our reputation. I found it pretty ironic that they were talking about family and stuff like that when we didn't even speak to each other for so long. And I'm pretty sure that in a real family, people at least talk to each other and don't try to manipulate and use the others to their advantage. I told them that I really didn't consider them family anymore, and they needed to stop bringing that up again and again, because it was painfully obvious to me what they were trying to do. They couldn't emotionally manipulate me into taking their side on this, and they definitely were not going to try and guilt-trip me anymore. None of their mind games were going to work with me, because so far I know what kind of people they are. And I know that they will stop at nothing to get what they want. So I wasn't falling for any of their little tricks. And when the emotional manipulation didn't work, my brother resorted to other means. By that I mean that he tried to force me and threatened to put up dangerous posts to defend me and get me fired from my hotshot job if I didn't comply with them. It was a pretty pathetic attempt because I just told him that if he did any of that, then they could add another lawsuit to their already ongoing list of troubles, because I'd also be filing for a defamation lawsuit against them. That shut him up, but my mom got all defensive and told me that I had no right to try and scare him like this, especially after everything that I had done to the family. I didn't like that because I hadn't done anything to the family. They had brought this all on themselves by lying to people and borrowing money from relatives to fund and enable their golden child. I had no part to play in any of this. And for her to make it sound like I was the one responsible for this was just wrong. Because I didn't make them take money from their relatives, never return it, and then come up with stupid excuses to avoid paying them back for years. I didn't raise my little brother to be an entitled man-child with no passion or goals, capable of doing literally nothing. That was all on them. So if they wanted to pat somebody on the back for that, they could do it to themselves and keep me out of it. I actually said all of this to my parents, and then I told them to get the hell out of my house because they were wasting my day off and I had more productive and fun things to do. My brother registered at first and got all up in my face, trying to intimidate me, and said that I wasn't going to get away with this and he was going to make sure of that, which was totally hilarious to me because what was he even going to do? Throw his video game controller at me? Or get his 20-year-old online weirdos to cyberbully me? That really ticked him off, and when I told him to brush his teeth more often if he was going to get so close to people to intimidate them, he went completely red in the face and my mom had to drag him away. But it was pretty satisfying for me to watch him struggle to hold back, because I knew that he was powerless here, and so were my parents, and it felt like just a huge victory to me, because after years of being targeted by them, I finally had them begging for help, but I was not going to help them, so they were going to feel exactly the way I had felt when I asked them to pay for me to go to college and they laughed in my face. Update 3. Hey, so it's been a couple of weeks since my parents visited me, and from what I've been hearing, things haven't been going well for them. My relatives have been saying that they have been going around and telling literally everyone they meet about how they are struggling to keep up with the bills as well as paying the lawyer, and now they also have to worry about how they are going to pay these people back, especially as they are about to retire in a couple of years, and this is just coming at the wrong time. Of course, the easiest solution for them would be to just make their younger son get a real job and do something with his life, so he can contribute to the household expenses. But they are not going to do that because they want to spoil him rotten, and they're succeeding at that job because he most certainly is pretty rotten on the inside. They have also been telling people that I felt bad about what I did at the wedding and how I created so much trouble for them, especially after the wonderful childhood that they had given me, and out of guilt I had apparently offered to pay for the lawyer for them, but my parents had rejected it because they had felt very insulted by me at the wedding, and they bragged about how I couldn't buy them out. A couple of my relatives talked to me about it and told me that while they were impressed by how mature and generous I was, they weren't sure if trying to help my parents out was the best thing to do, because they weren't exactly trustworthy. I had to reassure them that my parents had been lying and I had done no such thing as they were claiming. Any time any of my relatives talked to me about this, I clarify to them that whatever my parents told them was a complete and total lie. Then I told them the real version of what happened, where my family approached me and started begging me to help them out by lying and taking back what I said so it could buy them some time, and then my brother tried to threaten me, or whatever it is that he was trying to do. I'm still not sure, and that makes a lot more sense to them than whatever nonsense story my parents had fed them so they don't come out looking bad. It's amazing to me how they still care so much about how their relatives perceive them. They are in so much legal trouble, but they're still trying to portray me as the villain in their story, even when nobody's buying it. I guess their priorities are pretty clear. Literally nothing is more important to them than making me look bad. LOL. Update 4. Okay, so I recently learned that my parents lost all 3 cases against them, and they have to pay back the people they had borrowed money from within the next couple of months, which sucks for them, I guess. But it's great for me. I was really happy when I heard that. Of course, my relatives were the ones who told me about this, and they found out because my parents started whining almost immediately about how I had absolutely ruined them and now they would never have any money left after they retired. Even now they are blaming ME for this, instead of acknowledging and accepting that this is just the consequence of their own actions. I can't even begin to imagine the mental gymnastics that it would require to come to a conclusion like this after everything that has taken place. It's not surprising, though, because I always knew that their life practically revolved around me, even though my brother was the golden child. It was always me who they wanted to put down and portray as the villain in all their stories, so I guess they're making the most of this opportunity to be the talk of the town for all the wrong reasons. Unfortunately, they don't realize that this is not a good thing, and nobody has anybody's sympathy for them whatsoever. They just want attention, and that's it. They don't care where it comes from and for what reasons they receive it, as long as people are talking to them and about them. They just want an opportunity to whine to people about how difficult their life is because of me, and it's more evident now than ever. Update 5. So I have great news and I can't wait to share it with you guys, and I hope that it brings as much joy to you as it did to me. Are you guys ready for it? My brother had to get a job. That's right, I actually feel like the king of the world right now because this is a day that I have been waiting for most of my adult life. The day that I would see my brother pushed into actually working instead of just sitting at home and playing games. I had to work my way through college and make my own path myself, while my brother never had to worry about any of it because he had my parents backing him up. But now, it feels like the universe has brought justice to our family in the most beautiful and poetic way possible. When I was in college, I had to work as a cashier at the diner to be able to pay for stuff, and I recently learned that my brother has had to get a job as a cashier at the video game store because revenge is a dish best served cold. I couldn't believe it when I heard it, so I had to drive all the way to where he works. I even sacrificed my lunch for it, but it was completely worth it when I saw the look on his face as soon as I walked into the store, and I relished the opportunity to walk around and make him uncomfortable and angry. It was a petty thing to do, but boy did I enjoy myself. Before I left, I even asked him if our parents cried on his first day of work like they had on his first day of school, and he just flipped me off and told me to leave. but I just loved the sight of that, and I really don't think that this year could get any better.